breaking news from the White House. This is an historic political and cultural moment in this country, and the issue, gay marriage.
That's right. Investigation on the level of hostility towards gay people.
Progress for the LGBT community seems to be on its way. The Senate recently passed the Employment Non-Discrimination Act, which would essentially ban discrimination against the LGBT community.
Lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender healthcare equality.
It's hard to tell just how many of them are out there. There are guesstimates. The numbers run anywhere between 1.5 and 3 million homeless kids in America these days. What's most shocking is that more than 40% of them are gay.
In 2013, 1,750,000 people were homeless in America. In 2012 through 2013, a record 1.2 million kids were homeless. Although the LGBT youth community makes up 5% of the youth population, they make up more than 40% of the homeless youth population.
Queer folks, I think, have a lot less access to wealth or any type of economic safety net.
The violence intensified pretty quickly, and within a couple of months I was out of the house. Other times parents are trying to mold their child back into this image that they had of who they were going to be or what they were going to look like, and in doing that are inherently rejecting who their child is.
My father was very abusive. He was an alcoholic. Him telling me, you wouldn't ever be a homosexual, I'm gonna break your neck if you turn out to be this, that, and other, it scared me. So I started running away.
These are just some of the many threats that homeless LGBT youth face. Homeless Youth Any Given Tuesday is a short film that brings light to some of these threats.
The waves of love.
You're our son!
Just
how can you do this to your mother and I? Disgusted with you.
Washed in its way. The waves of life just crash me down. Could you just care? Why don't you care? You'll push out to die. All this time I'm just tumbling wrong, upside down. Come on, don't give up yet. That's all they say. I am on my way. I know I will wake, so just drown me now and spare me.
My name is Rocki and I work at Avenues for Homeless Youth, which is an organization that provides short-term housing and transitional living program for young people who are experiencing homelessness. And then within Avenues, I run a GLBT-specific housing program called the GLBT Host Home Program. So that's for gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender young people between the ages of 16 and 20 who are experiencing homelessness. And what we do is we connect those young people to folks in the community who have extra bedrooms. So it's really a grassroots, community-based response to homelessness. most common reason that we all talk about, and by we I mean kind of the communities at large, is family rejection, right? So that's a narrative that's out there, and most people have heard about it. And if you were to ask, why are queer youth homeless overrepresented in the homeless youth population, I think most people would say family rejection. That's half the truth. The other half, or the other reasons that young people find themselves homeless regardless of sexual orientation or gender identity, have to do with racial justice and economic justice issues. So there are many young people that have been in the LGBT hosting program, or who have navigated our homeless youth shelters here in the Twin Cities, who identified as LGBT, most of whom are youth of color, whose families are also experiencing housing instability, whose parents are incarcerated, there are lots of reasons, right, for their families to be experiencing crises that then lead to perhaps more conflict around sexual orientation or gender identity. There's a reason why this narrative around family rejection is so highlighted. It is one that is in some ways easier for us as a community to respond to, right? It's easy for me to point my fingers at family and say, your family doesn't accept you, so I will, and I love you. Than for me to say, you know what, I'm going to do something about our deportation policies, or around racist, housing policies. So it's not one or the other. There is family rejection, and there are all these other issues that have to do with economic justice and racial justice. And people who identified as LGBT and were experiencing homelessness and navigating the supportive systems were experiencing a lot of homophobia and transphobia within those systems. And to give those systems credit, they realized that and said, we are homophobic, we are transphobic, and we're going to do something about it. And that's where some of the LGBT specific programs grow out of, a concern for the experiences of the young people who were queer identified. Some young people build relationships with their hosts that last forever. They are creating family in that way. Other young people don't stay in touch at all with their hosts. For X amount of time, they didn't have to worry about food and shelter, and they stayed in that host home, and that's great. Develop together. It's about building trust. So a young person might come in wanting, I just want a safe place to be, and then, 5 years later, 10 years later, they're still family. I've learned a lot of humility, appreciation. In some ways, I'm more confident than I used to be, and in some ways, I'm less confident than I used to be as a young social worker. Certainly, I think the biggest change has been around my whiteness and how I see my whiteness and how I see whiteness in this country. How I see race and racism, how I see racism impacting the experiences of young people who are navigating the system. Has a lot of volunteer opportunities, with our shelter here, and with tutoring, with helping us clean our space, with the clothing closet, with doing drives, for winter coats.